Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
In this episode, we'll be playing Star Wars Squadrons, the 5v5 space-flying competitive pilot game where your goal is to become the best pilot in the galaxy by shredding enemy ships with your starfighter.
Now this is an EA game, but stick with us, it's not as bad as you might think. Now the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Star Wars Squadrons is currently in full release and available on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation for $40.
In Star Wars Squadrons, there are 3 methods of gameplay, all of which have a different primary goal. The first gameplay mode is the campaign, in which you will fight for both the New Republic and the Empire in a squadron with AI in order to accomplish specific missions. The second is dogfight mode, which is essentially a team deathmatch game to 30 kills in a 5v5 scenario. And the third and final game mode is the fleet battles, and this mode is really the bread and butter of the game, and your goal here is to take out the enemy's capital ships in a massive battle with dozens of AI and 5 players fighting for each side. You will also have a group of 2 cruisers and an assault ship along with your capital ship to help you push the opposing team when your morale is high.
Now there are 4 ship classes within Squadrons. The first is the fighter class. The fighters are kind of a jack of all trades style of ship, but it doesn't really excel in anything specifically. The second we have is the bomber. These ships can do exactly what you would think they would do. They're basically just super tanky with a large amount of HP, but on the other hand, they can also do a large amount of damage to capital ships if they're left unchecked. The third class of starfighter you can pilot is the interceptor. The interceptors in this game are a ship with very low HP pools, but are able to dish out an extremely high amount of damage to smaller ships such as other starfighters in a very short period of time. The fourth and final ship type that the game offers is the support. The support ships in this game can do all sorts of things you may not expect. It has a very high amount of HP, but it is also very slow and it doesn't hit very hard at all. It is also the largest ship that a player can control within the game and focuses around repairing its allies and buffing them with things such as making them no longer available on radar for your opponents.
The progression system in Star Wars Squadrons is pretty straightforward. You level up by playing matches and gain more experience the better you do. For each level you gain, you will be also rewarded with a currency to spend on both cosmetics and on ship loadouts. This works kind of similar to the way you would build a loadout, for example, in Call of Duty, just each ship has 2 loadout slots in which you can pre-select the type of equipment that they come into combat with. These things could include homing missiles, a repair droid, or even large torpedoes that can do crippling damage to the enemy's capital ships if they are able to make it there without being shot down.
So what were our feelings towards the game while we were playing? Well, since it's an EA game, they are a little notorious for games being pay to win. But luckily, they seem to be done with that in this game. We did find it to be kind of a bummer that Dogfight didn't have a ranked mode, but that makes sense considering Squadron really wants to focus around its fleet battles, and therefore it is the only ranked mode that the game offers. The game is also clearly balanced around the fleet battles, and Dogfight definitely saw its fair share of unbalanced ships. So after giving it a few tries, we just decided to stick with fleet battles altogether.
Fleet battles in Squadrons is actually really fun. It almost feels as if you're playing a MOBA and there are waves of minions coming at you trying to take you out or push your capital ship. Only in Squadrons, these minions or AI pilots can actually shoot you down from time to time. To be fair though, with experience and more knowledge about the game, they became less and less of a threat as we figured out how to deal with them. Fleet battles does seem to have somewhat of a meta that has been developing since the game came out. A great example of this is at launch everyone was flying the X-Wing and TIE Fighter class, but as the community has played it more and more, some ships like the Y-Wing or the TIE Bomber can be, well, let's just say, a little overpowered.
The Empire's time has come, and Good job. Let's see how much, like 5 bombers?
But of course, it came with drawbacks, such as the bomber being very slow and having poor maneuverability. I'm sure a good fighter pilot would definitely be able to stomp on a bomber as soon as they get them in their sights.
Now, if you're not used to pilot games like us, don't worry too much. The game does give you a full tutorial within the campaign, and we would highly recommend you do it first. Not to mention, on top of that, Squadrons also gives you the option of using some weapons that act as an aim assist. A great example of this is that the X-Wing had a burst laser that did this, but it came at the cost of reduced maximum DPS. But after using it for a while, me and itsBagool both decided to move over to the non-aim assist weapons for that extra juicy damage.
There is definitely a lot to unbox with fleet battles and the balancing of ships and whatnot. But let's take a moment to talk about the campaign. Don't worry, we're not going to spoil anything here.
Wedge Antilles, Rogue Squadron. I hear you're the reason I was able to finally get a comm through.
Squadron's campaign is actually pretty awesome. It was one of the better campaigns we've played in a while actually, and it allowed you to see the war between the Empire and the New Republic from a simple fighter pilot's perspective on both sides. The missions didn't ever feel too easy on the default difficulty, but they also didn't make it seem unfair. I think through the whole campaign we both maybe failed once or twice even on some of the harder missions, but for the most part it wasn't too bad. We do wish though that the campaign would allow for the co-op mode, as we always play games together and with friends, so it was quite a bummer to find out that the game would not allow us to do this.
So now we're going to move on to the pros and cons section for this game. So the first pro that we have is that it's VR compatible. And I will say, since I got to play this in VR, it was absolutely amazing. There's nothing like being in the heat of a Star Wars fight, making yourself feel like you're in a movie. It was great. Next, we have that there's just no microtransactions and it's in an EA game, which to me is just unheard of, and it sounds amazing to me, and it was amazing not to have that. After that, we felt that there was actually a pretty good amount of customization for a game for $40. This had plenty of options for you to customize your pilot or your cockpit or the skin on the outside of your ship. Next, we have that the game is just really simple to learn and very intuitive for the controls, at least in my opinion, for like an Xbox controller. But it also has a really high skill cap where you can really shine when you become an ace pilot. Another thing was that the graphics just felt pretty dang spectacular. I mean, it really made you feel like you were in that movie, flying with Luke Skywalker or something, and then you get to take down a TIE fighter, and it's just so satisfying. It really is good. So finally, we have that there were just a large amount of map variation, at least more than expected for a game that's based in space. I mean, you'd think there'd just be one giant open area, but they actually had several different unique maps that made every game feel different.
Now let's swap over to the cons. First, we have that the game has no co-op campaign mode, and I feel like this is something that wouldn't be too hard to put into the game. I feel like it's something that the community wanted, but for some reason they just didn't add it. Next would be the fact that the character development in the story mode felt kind of optional. Like, unless you went out of your way to talk to each member of your squad, you never really understood who they were and why they were even there. And last, we have that the mouse and keyboard controls are very wonky and unenjoyable. I played them for a few minutes and was just like, no, please just give me my controller back.
So when we rate games, we want to get at least 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 spent. So for this game in particular, we would be wanting to get it roughly 40 hours of enjoyment out of that $40 that we spent on it. So after putting 24 played hours into this game, we give it 7 out of 10 potatoes.
Yeah, this game is overall very solid for the Star Wars lover in all of us. I do feel, however, that if the game was reskinned as any other flying universe, it would not receive the same amount of hype and love that it is receiving just for having the Star Wars logo on it. For this reason, we felt that we cannot give it anything higher than a 7, even though for the average gamer, we do believe that you will get your money's worth out of it.
Before you guys go, we would like to mention that we do have a Discord channel listed in our description where we play games with people in our community. We always love hearing suggestions for new games to make videos on, so feel free to drop by and leave us a comment on what you would like to see next.
And as always, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you liked the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.